Abrego Garcia's attorney. Now, we were told you were out on the air here, but in the newsroom we were told by CBS that when Abrego Garcia landed in Nashville, he did have an attorney there with him.
Okay.
So we are getting a statement from Abrego Garcia's attorney, and he basically says this shows the government was, quote, playing games with the court all along. Goes on to say due process means the chance to defend yourself before you're punished, not after. This is an abuse of power, not justice. Let's bring in another expert to talk about Abrego Garcia's case and this legal battle ahead.
Kelley Escobar Ortega is an immigration attorney in D.C. Kelley, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being here. You've spoken to us about this case now regarding Mr. Kelley Abrego Garcia now facing these new charges. What options does he have, does his legal team have, in trying to really defend himself now against these new allegations?
Absolutely. So in the criminal context, we know that there's opportunity to defend yourself, and he will have the opportunity before a jury, before a judge, to basically prove the government wrong. If he maintains that he was never involved in any conspiracy to transport or traffic individuals in the United States unlawfully, he will have that opportunity. Attorney General Pam Bondi also stated that once that process is over, he will be sent back to immigration authorities, and she expects him to be removed. But that's not taking into consideration that there is an administrative judge order saying that he cannot be removed to El Salvador. So I fully expect that once this criminal proceeding is over with, whether he wins or not, we will continue the immigration debate as to his protection to not be removed to El Salvador. So that's what we're going to see in the coming days outside of his criminal proceedings, is what's the government's position now in terms of being able to return him, considering the fact that they erroneously deported him in the first place.
So we've been talking about the contours of this very complicated case for a while now, and I'm curious because obviously this doesn't cite anything about the Maryland arrest.
Right.
But I wonder, does the fact that the Supreme Court ordered his return, whether this gives him any other special standing under immigration law at all?
Unfortunately, not necessarily. I think among legal experts, the conversation today, mostly since this breaking news came out, has been that this was the Trump administration's way of complying with the orders to facilitate his return to the United States without directly doing so and admitting that that's why he was coming back. The interactions in Nashville, Tennessee didn't come to light in the last 90 days or so. This was information that was known years ago. And so it appears that in many legal experts' opinion, including my own, that this was a way for the Trump administration to bring him back, knowing that there was no way that they were going to ever win in the federal court system to keep him outside of the United States, to allege and continue to bring the criminal context around him, that conversation, to keep it going and bring criminal charges and to facilitate his return that way, so that they can label him a criminal and keep that idea moving along.
Well, the government has filed 2 criminal charges, but there were also other swirling allegations that we heard from Attorney General Pam Bondi, namely that he may at some point, at least according to information that they allegedly have obtained, that maybe had even solicited inappropriate images of children. Do any of those other other allegations mentioned by the Attorney General play in this case at all, given that they were not mentioned in the complaint, in the indictment?
Absolutely. These co-conspirators allegedly shared this information with the federal government. And it's interesting that she is openly sharing this information, yet it wasn't enough to be able to charge him with any crimes of solicitation, with any other additional criminal violations. So it's clear that the government is being selective in terms of what they want to charge him criminally. If he is convicted, however, of these offenses, or if they bring up additional charges in the future, that can then play into his ability to keep the protection that he has which is withholding of removal, which prevents his deportation to El Salvador if he is convicted. However, because there is, this idea of due process in the United States, especially in the criminal context, he will have the opportunity in Tennessee to present a defense against these charges.
Kelley, let's talk about this intersection of criminal and immigration law. So how do the criminal charges that we're talking about, smuggling and conspiracy, interact with the immigration enforcement? Does one process take precedence over the other? How does this work?
Absolutely. So the criminal charges, the pending criminal charges will take precedence over his immigration detention and his immigration removal process. So the government will allow him to answer to these charges and to be able to either defend himself and see what the results will be before the Tennessee federal court. And then once that process is over, if he is convicted of one or both charges, the immigration judge who is assigned his process or his case again will consider if he is convicted, if that's enough to remove the protection that he has, and if they can remove him to El Salvador. If it's not enough to remove his protection, then they have to keep him in the United States or identify a third country. Yet we've seen in the federal court system as well that the U.S. government has been removing people to third countries without an opportunity to answer, without sufficient notice. So we're seeing a lot of the same themes when it comes to removal and protections from removal continue in the dialogue in the federal court system, where the Trump administration, more often than not, has been losing. So the results of these criminal charges will definitely influence the next steps in his immigration proceedings.
Immigration attorney Kelley Escobar Ortega, thank you so much for the insight. We certainly appreciate it. Well, we are all